We're going to move to the next speaker. We have Alex Young.
Thank you, Member Toastmaster. My name is Alex Young, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight on the schedule with such talented speakers. My speech tonight is titled, The Illusion of Free Will. The idea of having free will and our ability as conscious human beings to choose our next action is core to our personal identities and who and how we each believe ourselves to be. It's true for both the secular as well as steadfast religious believers. It's our own subjective everyday reality that we get to decide what happens next. But that experience of being in control doesn't actually match the reality of having the free will we think we do. Tonight, I'll start with a basic definition of free will. Next, I'll share the everyday and laboratory-based evidence I believe strongly supports our lack of true free will. And last, I'll conclude with why I think this distinction matters. So to begin, to have free will in the most literal sense of the words would mean that we both know how our minds work and are the author of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. This simply isn't true. Jermail, what did you do when I tossed you that ball?
I caught it.
The truth is that Jermail is explaining his experience because he's consciously aware of what happened. But that's not the same as actually being in control of what happened. In a sense, he was along for the ride. He observed that experience in much the same way all of us did. A ball was racing towards him and he reached up his hands to catch it. He didn't have to think about it, it just happened, and that's the point here. Everything we do and experience just happens. Just as our hearts are pumping blood and our lungs are pulling in and expelling air, our thoughts and decisions are just happening. The reason we feel like we're in control of them is this great mystery of consciousness. Now, none of us pretends that we are responsible or actively participating in the work of our hearts or lungs because we're not conscious of those activities. But because we all have these voices in our heads and we're aware of our thoughts, our feelings, and our decisions, we make the mistake of confusing awareness for authorship. There's a huge difference, and this is the illusion. Because we're aware of our thoughts, we assume that we purposefully created them. The truth is that you no more know the next thought that's going to pop into your head than you do the next word that's going to come out of my mouth. You cannot decide your next mental state, thought, or action until it arises. Where is the free will in that process? Said another way, just because you can choose what you want does not mean you have free will. Why? Because you are not consciously choosing what you want. You just simply want it. You can't explain why, you just do. And so choosing what you want or choosing one want over another does not mean you have free will because your wants have been given to you and not determined by you. How often do you find yourself daydreaming? Sometimes even when you're driving, right? And how often are you trying to focus on some important project, maybe writing your next Buckhead ToastMasters speech, and you're continuously distracted or caught in a loop of procrastination? Why did you try to quit smoking or start exercising or begin a new diet over and over again, and then one time it just happened to work? If you stop and pay attention to your moment-by-moment experiences, you'll start to see that you are truly at the whim of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions that just arise in that moment. Now, beyond these everyday moments we all experience, the objective smoking gun evidence for this idea are recent fMRI and brain scan studies. Participants were asked a series of questions. For instance, would you like coffee or tea? Would you rather go to Barcelona or Paris? These studies showed that our brains will indicate the choice we're going to make as much as a full second before we consciously think we've made that decision. Again, our brain has decided before we think we've made that decision. As the late, great Christopher Hitchens said, we don't have a brain, we are a brain. Now, I know many of us here are religious believers and many are not. One of the elements I like most about this topic is that it stands in either case. Even if you believe that God or say a soul is involved in who we are as human beings, nothing about this argument changes. The unconscious operations of a higher power or soul would grant you no more freedom or free will than the unconscious physiology of your brain. So what? So what does any of this matter? 2 words, empathy and gratitude. If we can start to accept that none of us are truly in control of who and how we are, it changes how we view ourselves and others. It's easy and natural to see a headline of a serial pedophile and consider him a terrible, evil person worthy of being tortured and killed, especially if your child was one of his victims. That's the natural reaction. The truth is that he is as responsible for his actions as we are for our actions here tonight. This is not an issue of responsibility. It's an issue of why and how we blame people and hold them accountable for who and how they are. We necessarily need to keep pedophiles and other people who do bad things away from the rest of society to keep them from continuing to harm others. But the idea of needing to punish bad people that so much of our penal system is based on, an eye for an eye and certainly the death penalty, assumes that we all have the same starting point and ability to freely determine whether we do good or bad. That's just not reality. Reality is that if you were to interview prison inmates, you would hear stories consistently featuring how nurture, say bad genetics, a predisposition to addiction, that's nature, nurture, growing up in an abusive environment around bad influences, and chance, likely some unlucky turns along the way, shaped and exacerbated the criminals that they became. And on the other side of the coin, it's easy to look at the accomplishments in our own lives and feel proud of what we did. But the truth is that everyone here tonight got insanely lucky at the life lottery. I'm not saying that you haven't worked hard to get an education, provide for yourself, be an upstanding citizen, and be here tonight, but your shittiest day is better and more comfortable than the best day of 99.99% of all humans who have ever lived. You didn't choose what year you were born or where you were born or who your parents were or who your classmates were or the influences that shaped you into the person you are today, and neither did that pedophile. So whether you say, there but by the grace of God I go, or there but by the grace of nature and chance I go, lifting the veil of the illusion of free will show you the way to empathy and gratitude. I have genuine empathy for that pedophile, and I have sincere gratitude that I get to be living this life married to that woman and be here learning and growing and speaking in front of all of you here tonight. Thank you.